Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 25. Well, I am not entirely sure how engaging this particular episode is going to be. Basically, we will mostly try to set up the railroad logistics, watching them run around to make sure they are actually doing their job the way we want, and that will be about all we do. At the very end we will manage to get started on the road and rail tracks leading toward our next base of operations, but that's about it. All our efforts will go towards setting up the trains, which will include a passenger line going to the refinery, since that place has a station already ready to receive such a service. And of course, since we are talking about trains that need a proper spaced out schedule, we will also end up building an end station for them, so they can at least try to get themselves into some kind of a rhythm, instead of bunching together. Before we get started, if this is not your first video from this channel, you already know what to expect. If you want to be kept up to date, please consider subscribing, and if you like what you see, leaving a like will also help letting me know what to focus on. But enough talking, let's get into it. Oh, right. First we need to fix these pair of signals. I got them wrong in the last episode, and it made the oil train stay stuck in the customs office. Now it is free to go about its business. Just to be sure we have no similar issues on the network, I made a quick flyby of all the major clusters of signals, and made sure they were on the outside of the tracks, where they belong. Also, it seems I forgot to add the mixed signals at the rail distribution offices. We really need these in order to use all platforms at their full capacity. As I've said before, we will need to use one office for domestic deliveries, and the other for foreign exports. So, just so we don't end up making a mix-up, let's label them accordingly. We can start with the oil, which will need to go to the construction hub. And since we're here, we might as well at all the stations, most of which are for dropping things off. In fact, the only places that will require pickups are the food and clothing warehouses, and only for exports at the moment. We should also include the farm grain silo, so we can deliver the crops where they are needed. And that's pretty much it for the assignments for the domestic office. Before we add the final one at the border for importing things, let's take care of the trains, make sure we have all we need, and then we can start moving stuff around. 3 locomotives should be enough for now. For the wagons, we just need to buy them at the border, set up these new locos to move them all to the distribution offices, and let them do that until all are delivered. At this moment, we need box cars for the grain, bread, clothes, chemicals, and the components. We will also need a couple dry bulk cars for the cement, half a dozen hopper cars for the gravel, and maybe 3 more oil tankers, since we already have the other 3 running on our existing train. And needless to say, all this requires quite a bit of money, so it was time to take out yet another loan. But once the production in the refinery is running on full, it shouldn't be much of a problem. Oh, right. Almost forgot about the state cars. We will need those to deliver the construction materials for the open storage. Now we just set up the locos to deliver the cars, and let them go about their day. As we follow this train, we might as well start placing down Q signals along the tracks, making sure we keep them well spaced out, but also frequent enough to be useful. And that about does it. We got most of the signaling covered at this point. There are no more wagons left in the customs house. We can send the locomotives home to their office, and after a couple last checks, we can let them start filling things up. Since the tracks are strictly one way in both directions, we need to wait for them to reach a turnaround point, and then we can send them to the office. We had power issues, but we have enough money to import power. I guess one of the substations must have caught fire. Since we no longer need to rely on a dedicated line to deliver the fuel and bitumen to the construction hub, we can tell this train to head over to the domestic office, and only go out if there is something to do. Just for good measure, we should wait for it to be empty, and only then send it over. Also, now that these wagons should no longer have a restriction on what products they can deliver, we can reset their advanced settings, and allow them to carry everything. And it seems the fuel storage at the hub needs refilling. We just make a couple last-minute checks, and then we can add the customs house, and start importing things in bulk. Right now, I have the clothing warehouse to only bring in the crops. When I discover this oversight, I will also add the chemicals, but it's used sparingly, so we will have plenty left to use by that time. Plus we have a road-based distribution office doing that job, so we're fine. Anyways, I told the grain delivery trucks to stop bothering about the second drop-off point, and focus on keeping the food factory full of grain. That's all they need to worry about now. Well, at this point, it seems most things are in order. We can add the customs house, and release the trains. Okay. That amount of electro components is a bit much. I tried to change things around, by lowering the fill threshold, and sending the train home a couple times, but no luck. Oh well, we will use all that sooner or later. This is quite expensive, but once we have the steel and electronics industries online, it will come back to us. By the way, I will definitely need to download the paint job mod from the workshop for those box cars. These bright neon blue colors are a bit too garish for my taste. Now, before we move on to the exports, how about we deal with the passenger line next? We just need a reasonably quick locomotive, a couple passenger cars, and we are set. We don't need anything big, 200 workers per train will be more than enough. It's not a huge distance from the town to the refinery. For some reason, I still can't add the train depot as a stop, so I just sent the train to the distribution offices as a second stop, and just quickly sent them to the depot once they had the cars in tow. For a second I was confused as to why I couldn't add these stations as stops for the train. I even double-checked the signals along the route. But then I remembered the existing stops in its line plan, and after getting rid of those, it all worked out fine. Now, the refinery is quite hungry for workers, so how about we redirect the town buses in Dolny, and instead of dropping workers off at the central bus station, they could go to the train station instead. Not really necessary, but the workers need to walk quite a bit to go around the refinery. Let's just give them a small footpath connection, so they can get to work faster. Well, these houses have quite a bit of unemployment. Maybe we should give that bus line a couple extra vehicles. We will buy those buses a bit later, but the train is also almost full when it leaves. I would like to give it a bit of extra capacity to be safe, so I decided to add a second one to the line. Okay. We have 2 trains running on the line now. And just to be extra sure they can work nice together, let's give them an end station, so they at least try to have some kind of a normal looking spacing along the line. The most logical place for such a building is somewhere near one of the stations. I think we can use the town branch for it. We have enough space for another junction. Maybe a bit longer turn will make it all work nicely. Not my best work, but it will do the job just fine. I didn't even bother trying to build the tracks in the usual stages. They are very close to the RCO, and the segments are short. We can deal with a tiny bit of traffic issues while things get sorted. Well, with that taken care of, we can focus on the export office now. It's a similar story to the other one, but we need fewer cars right now. We won't be exporting cement or gravel, for example, so we don't need those kinds of cars. In fact, we only really need tankers and boxcars to start with. Apart from the fuel and the bitumen, we can only really export food and clothes. Well, we might be able to sell grain too, but the tracks aren't set up for that. The grain silo tracks face inland, but that's a very low value product, so I don't mind not selling it. Alright. Same as before, only in reverse. Instead of moving stuff from the customs office, we will instead move things to it. And to make sure we have some goods left over for domestic use, we also set the pickup threshold for the stuffs well above 0%. That is why we needed 2 separate offices. We cannot set different pickup percentage thresholds in one office for the same station. And we are already selling bitumen. $200,000 rubles for a single trip. Not too bad. And we don't have dozens of trucks running around to achieve that throughput. Trains are the MVP of transportation for sure. Anyways, I'm still not happy with the unemployment in the town outskirts, so time to buy those extra buses I mentioned earlier. Making people wait less time in the stations should help reduce the likelihood of them going home early. Well, that was quite a long wait. But it should get better once the new end station tracks are done. And before I forget, we should give that end station a road, so it can get built. That road is a bit much. Too bad it has to start this far away from the building. But the slope running up to the overpass bridge kind of forced our hand. I guess this one will have to do. And with the tracks done, we can place the signals again. Before, we had room for 3 signal blocks, but now we can only really squeeze in 2 of them, I think. Wow! The refinery is so well staffed that it can process all the oil coming in from the nearby pump jacks. We might need to add more in the future, but not now. We have plenty of fuel and bitumen to both use and sell, so I even lowered the number of workers in the plant to ease back a little bit. And here I remembered that we can also sell food if we have too much, so I added that warehouse to the export office. And since we had trains doing that job now, and we had an office doing the town food distribution nearby, we can get rid of these old free offices at this point. They are truly superfluous. The road leading to the end station is done, so we can get started on the building itself. And looking at the passenger trains, they are already bunching together, so the sooner it's done, the better. And done. After we add it to the passenger line, the trains should be able to space themselves out a little bit better. Wait, wrong position. It should go after dropping off the passengers. Now that we have these trains more or less sorted, we can get rid of the bus line moving workers to the refinery. They are a waste of fuel at this point. We had a pretty sizable death spike earlier in the year. Sadly, I had no saves for that date, so I couldn't check it out. Wait, we still have these footpaths here. I keep deleting them in between episodes during tests, and I finally managed to catch them during a recording. There are not quite enough workers making their way to the bus station. Most of them are piling into the train station instead. Maybe we will need to split the bus commuter lines inside Dolny, so we can move a bit more of them to the food and clothing factories. The refinery is a bit overstaffed anyways, and we need more of them in Satsumograd. And I finally noticed that the warehouse needs chemicals, so I added it to the list of products that get delivered there by train. It seems the vehicle scrapping plant is stuck, since it has too many mechanical parts waiting to be picked up. I suppose we could tell one of the distribution offices to keep an eye on it, and empty it out from time to time. Ever since we started using trains to keep the construction storages filled, some of these buildings are struggling to keep empty. This will need to be fixed in the next episode. We can just tell the road-based distribution office to stop using the customs house altogether, leave that to the rail office, and use the recycled materials to keep the storages at 100%, and only send out trains if they need filling to a lower percentage. That should help keep these places empty. For now, I just told a random office to do it for the mechanical parts, but this is just a stopgap measure. Well, I really wanted to at least get started on the tracks and roads going toward our new base of operations, so I started looking at our options. First, we need a crossing where the tracks end, so both sides can be built. Placing one-way signals was a mistake. They should be mixed signals, so the construction area can be entered and exited on both lanes. We will fix that in the next episode, since I only discovered the error after the recording was over. Anyways, this is the area where we will build next. We already have the coal and iron deposits. Before we decide on the rest of the sites, let's bring in the tracks and the road. But I already knew that the biggest island will be where the city will go. Since we had no time left, I just went around and started labeling potential places for different things. That peninsula looked promising for the construction hub. As I've said, the main island looks good for a small steel working community. We could continue with the rails, and use this smaller island for the town distribution hub, where we can drop off food and other goods the people will need. As for the main industries apart from the mines, the nice flat area looks like a good place for it. Just for good measure, I also extended the main road leading to the area, and stopped where the tracks terminated. We'll likely start planning out the area more thoroughly in the next episode. I didn't realize that we only need to add two-way signals after the crossing yet, so I tried to reintroduce the old signals, but I get a bit scatterbrained after an hour of playing. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking to it. Alright, that's about it for this one. So, let's see what we need to quickly do before we start planning things at the new site. We will definitely need to sort out the recycling plants, so they don't get filled up too much. That should be an easy fix. We just need to tell the rail office to only fill up the storages to, let's say, 70%, and let the road-based office do it to 100%, and make it stop using the customs house. Hell, we can even tell it to use the border to export the excess, in case it cannot unload the recycled stuff in the construction storages. Then, we will definitely need to do something about the staffing issues in Satsumograd. With the trains added, we are taking way too many workers to the refinery, and that place is now overstaffed. We need to redirect some workers to the industrial district instead. I will also take a look, and see if we can squeeze in a passenger station among the factories, but I don't have high hopes for that. But messing with the buses in Dolny should be enough to fix the problem. Anyways, if you haven't done it already, I'd love it if you subscribe to the channel, and leaving a like would also let me know that this video was worth making. If you feel that it was good enough, and you can afford it, please consider going to my Ko-fi page, which you can find in the description, and donate an amount that you feel is appropriate. And if you did like what you've seen, there should be links to some of my other videos and playlists on the screen. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you in the next one.